you're new and you don't have a lot of street cred, it's like, dude, just start the podcast and start freaking interviewing people. I know that's what I did. Like before I even started getting into real estate, I just started interviewing other apartment investors and started asking them questions that I legitimately had, and made all the mistakes with that podcast. But we still raised a ton of investor capital through the pod just by interviewing experts. People started to trust us over time. And then as you get more and more experience, you can start to be more and more the focal point of these podcast episodes. But, we're at the point now where like, okay, how can I continue to grow the podcast? How can we get better? We're doing 3 episodes a week right now. I would say 95% of our guests are flying in from out of town. What are some creative ways that you utilize to maybe land some of these bigger name guests? I know you maybe DMing them in the Instagram, started doing a little bit more of that. But what are some creative ways that work well for you? Because I know you've had on a lot of bigger name guests on your show.
Yeah, I think first to answer Patrick's question about the co-host, you can absolutely have a co-host who has credibility. It's great. If you guys are going to be like I said, it all starts back to what are you trying to sell at the end of the day, right? So if you're trying to sell coaching for some, niche, you better have a sick track record at that niche if you want to sell it. So that's what I think it all comes down to. So if that guy is the face of this program or whatever the case is, then for sure that's going to help the credibility side a ton. So anyways, back to your question about getting guests and everything. It's funny because like I actually haven't really tried very hard to get guests. I think I've been a very good, I don't want to say lucky, but I think that I have a few things going for me that's allowed for it to happen. So number one, I'm in Vegas. And so people are always in and out of Vegas. And so that definitely helps. That's number one. I would say number two, WealthCon actually helped a lot too.
How so?
Because when you just throw big events all the time, people see it. And it's just kind of like instant credibility. Just seeing big stages, because people always want to speak on stage, right? In front of 1,000 people. And so I think WealthCon helped a ton.
And also when those guests that you have on, the keynote speakers, they come in, you're going to rip a podcast with them anyways, right?
Oh yeah. Every single time. Yep. So I speak with all of our guys. I think that as your platform gets bigger, you're providing them values now because they're getting in front of an audience that they, may or may not know them. And so it's beneficial for them. And I think that, I guess just for me, I've done a good job of building relationships with people. Like, it's not just, hey, come on my podcast and see you later. Because there are people like that. And,
I know.
It just is what it is. Whereas, like, I truly am good friends with many of these people. And I think that that's just a personality thing that it's like, dude, like, I don't, for me, I either want to be your friend and be like all in on that, or I don't want to know you at all. That's just my personality. So yeah, I just think like that. I think when people come to my office, they see that like, oh crap, there's an actual business here. And I'm like, yeah, what'd you think we did all day? Do you think I just filmed freaking podcast all day or what?
Yeah.
I'm like trying to make money. I literally film to make money. That's the whole point of why I do this. It's just leads. It's just marketing for my other businesses. And so then I think they get more respect. I think we do a good job of like treating them first class. They come in, they got their picture. We give them a gift bag. My assistant gives them a tour. We'll pick them up from the airport. We'll just do everything first class for them. And they're like, wow, like your team is really top notch. And then that's what's led to them speaking at WealthCon, because they get a good experience. And then they're like, dude, if you ever need anything, let me know. Like, I'll hop on a call. I'll come speak. I'm down for whatever. And I'm like, amazing. And so I think it's all first impression. If you make a good first impression, it leads to the next thing. It leads to them making an introduction to the next famous person and whatever the case is. Like I've had many come from, oh dude, like you got to meet Ryan. He's great. And then we meet and then we do something and then, it works.
Yeah. I feel like the in-person is game changer in the sense that you're actually really building a relationship with someone. My first podcast that I had with old partners for like 3 years still exists, but I was like, when I broke up with them, like, you guys take that podcast, I'm going to start my own. But that was virtual, and so it's Zoom, which is still great. But the in-person, I think the biggest difference for me that I've noticed is like you just alluded to, you're actually building a genuine relationship with that guest. And I've never had someone like leave the studio after hanging out with them, recording a podcast, getting to know them, taking some photos together, and not feel like, hey, that was a freaking awesome freaking experience. And like, I fucking feel like, I know that person now. And so that's led to a lot of other guests, because they'll be like, hey, Rich, you got to meet so-and-so. He'd love to come on your pod. And then boom, now you get that warm intro.
Dude, I think the best part of a pod is literally what you just said. It is the relation. Okay. There's so many reasons to do a podcast. So everyone here should have a podcast, number one. But number two, like, take away the fact that you are, able to go film something with somebody that they then can actually collaborate with you on. And now you guys cross-pollinate, and, that's amazing. Take away the fact that you could chop it all up and get your reels and everything else. You don't have to go film short form. You can just repurpose it all. So it's the most efficient thing you could do. Take away the fact that the most highly targeted avatar listens to podcasts. The richest people listen to podcasts, because it's done while people are doing other productive things in their life. They're working out, they're driving around. They're like, you're getting the right avatar of people who like podcast. Like all those things make it a no-brainer anyways. But easily the biggest thing has been the relationships that the podcast has brought. And, like I said, it's not like Grant Cardone's just coming to my office just to hang out. He's too busy. Like, what's he going to do? I'm like, yeah, let's just hang out for like 3 hours and drink coffee and just talk. Like, he's just not going to do it. But if I'm like, hey, come to the office, let's go film a podcast and, chop it up and talk about stuff. It's like, all of a sudden, it's the same thing. It ain't no different than drinking coffee, but all of a sudden it's just broadcasted now. And he gets benefit from it versus there's no benefit for him to just come hang out for 3 hours. Like if hundreds of thousands or millions of people can now go see that conversation, it's worth it to him because it actually will make money for him.
Hey guys, real quick, the only way the show grows, the only way we continue to bring on bigger and better guests is if you guys rate, review, and share the show. So if you could take 2 seconds or with a click of the thumb to review on Apple or Spotify, it will mean the world to me. But more importantly, we'll be able to reach more entrepreneurs and more real estate investors and help them build wealth through this podcast. Now back to the show.
The relationships are the craziest part. And like, I can just tell you, as 2 recent examples, I mentioned Russell Brunson here earlier. I remember going to Funnel Hacking Live back in 2018, and I was new to the internet world. I didn't even know what the heck was going on. I didn't really know who he was, but he was like the first online thing I ever bought. And I was like, dude, this guy's like legit. I could sell online stuff. Literally the first 2 years, 2018, 2019, I made less than $100,000. I'm like, this online thing is stupid. I'll just keep flipping houses. I make way more money doing that. I ended up having a breakthrough. But long story short, I remember back then, I was like, yeah, like, what's it cost to hire Russell one-on-one as a coach? And they're like, you don't even do it, And, today, I think his like inner circle, his highest level of inner circle is like $250,000 to like have his number and do different things. And then his normal inner circle is like $50,000, and that, you don't really even get access to him. It's like a couple of times a year, whatever. Right. And, I ended up meeting Russell, backstage at an event in Utah, like 8 months ago. And I was just like, hey bro, just want you to know, I went to Funnel Hacking Live back in 2018. That encouraged me to write my first book. I don't even have it on me. But, I wrote my first book because of, your influence, and I made my first course. I bought ClickFunnels, never did anything with it, but I just want you to know, like, it got me started. on this journey. And I just was like, yo, if you're ever in Vegas, I'd love to have you on the pod. And that was like 8 months ago. Right. And he's like, yeah, I haven't like flown out for pods or anything in the last couple of years. I haven't like focused on that at all. I've just been building out like ClickFunnels 2.0 and stuff. I was like, all right, no big deal. But when you're ready, let me know. So then he DMs me a few months back and he's like, hey dude, like I'm getting ready to do some pods again. I'd love to come out. I was like, sick, what day you thinking? How long you got? He's like, I got as long as you got. Like, I'm just coming out for the day. I was like, bro, if you tell me that, like, we'll go from 9 to 5. Like, you just tell me how long you got. And he's like, dude, as long as you got, like, I don't want to be a burden. I was like, you're being a burden to me? I was like, I'm about to just pick your brain, like, every way imaginable. So anyways, he ends up coming out and we spent the whole day together. We filmed for like an hour, 2 hours, but then the rest was like literally masterminding. And what he wanted to know, well, what I wanted to know was everything. What he wanted to know was organic content because he had never built like organic content. He had just strictly been paid for so many years. And he's realized even a guy as big as him, he's like, dude, I got to do more organic to get my paid to work better. And so he wanted to just see like what the team looked like, how we did it, the process, everything. So he was coming for his own learning lesson too. And ever since then, we become buddies. And, if I got a question about funnels, I got him on speed dial. And so like that doesn't happen without a podcast. It just does not happen.
No, I totally agree. Yeah, I mean, we got Grant Cardone on out in San Diego a year ago, and he came on my first podcast. It was like perfect time, perfect place. It was like right when COVID just dropped in 2020, and this is virtual. Grant came on and interviewed him, but he didn't remember who I was. It was virtual. But this one, he came out, and we just happened to find out that he was coming out to San Diego to speak here downtown at a convention that was like literally like a mile away from our studio. So just literally emailed his assistant and was like, yo, mentioned or noticed Grant's coming out here to speak. We got a podcast studio literally across the street. What are the chances we could book Grant? Would love to have him on the show. And she was like, yeah, Grant would love to do the pod. Can you send a black SUV? And so next thing you know, Alex on my team goes over, picks him up in an Escalade, and him and Sabrina come over ripping a pod. But the value is what you just mentioned. I mean, now Grant's in the studio. First podcast was virtual. He didn't remember who I was, but in person now, he's in here with his daughter. We're hanging out, chopping it up, having a great time. And, next thing you know, it's like, okay, he gives me his cell phone number. He follows me on Instagram. He remembers who I am. And you never know where those relationships will lead to, but also from like a social capital standpoint, it builds a lot of trust with your audience, future investors, other folks to come on. They're like, hey, if Grant's going to go on his show, then I should too. Right. And so that led to a lot more folks being like, yeah, I want to come on. I'm curious your thoughts, man, because you've interviewed a lot of folks, and I've interviewed a lot of folks on my podcast as well. And I'm curious, what are your thoughts on like what really separates those folks that are putting out a lot of content on social media and they're not growing versus the ones that are really popping off, they're growing quickly? One thing I notice is like, when the lights come on, a lot of these folks that are growing successfully, they almost like kick it into another gear. It's not like acting, but it's almost like they have a little bit more of an entertaining gear and they speak with conviction. What is like that one or two thing that you notice with all these guests that you've interviewed that separates the ones that are not growing from the ones that are really popping off?
Growing in terms of social media?
Yeah. The Alex Hermosis, the Patrick Bet-Davids, the folks that are really growing quickly.
So I created a system of like 10 attributes that make basically like create a player on social media.
Create a player. Okay. I like that.
Yeah. Like they're the 10 things that, like one day I was just on a plane and I was pondering this question. I'm looking at my notes to see if I've never even done a presentation on it. I should. Or maybe I did a long time ago. But yeah, okay, here it is. Yeah. So, I basically said like there are 10 factors that really dictate how good you're going to be on social media. So you guys can write this down and steal it. And, like some are more important than others, but this is what makes it up. So number one is track record, which we talked about. Like if you've done nothing, nobody's going to listen to you. I mean, you could be just a pure entertainer, but for all intents and purposes of business content and entrepreneurial content, track record matters a lot. So that's number one. You'll always be capped by your track record. Every single person you look at who's big on social media has a massive business track record. Who's massive. Second is communication. How good are they at speaking and communicating, right? I've had people tell me a lot that they love how simple I speak. I don't use big words. It's quick. It's to the point. I don't draw things out. And so, that's my communication style. So I think how good of a communicator you are matters. 3 is your creativity. This is where like guys like Mr. Beast thrive. Dude, like how crazy and creative can you be with your content? You just, that speaks for itself. 4 is your network. So how big is your network? I mean, this is what we're talking about now. If you have a massive network, your ability to grow is significantly higher. If I could just throw out banger guest after banger guest, I'm going to grow pretty quick. 5, this is vulnerability / transparency. I mean, how deep are you willing to let people go? So for me, I talk about my faith a lot. I talk about my family a lot. I talk about wins, losses. Very few are willing to get as deep as I get because of whatever reason, right? I'm like, look, I've lost millions of dollars doing this. It was so stupid. Hey, this is what I believe. This is what I believe faith-wise. And so, being able to just have conviction about what you are or who you are and everything matters. 6 is TAM, total addressable market. You're going to always be capped by your niche. So, if you're an Airbnb guy, that has a cap and it just is what it is. And so however many people your content can reach matters. This is why guys like Patrick Bet-David are going into politics.
And not talking insurance.
Yeah. Like politics has the biggest cap you can have. It just is what it is. Now,
real quick on the politics.
Okay.
This is kind of a interesting topic. Every time I got to be careful, right? I got investors, I got a lot of stuff going on. And so, I try not to get too into politics, but every now and then I'll put out a Twitter post or something and I'll kind of, allude to some politics. But every time I do that or talk about Donald Trump in any way, I lose followers. It's the only time I ever lose followers. Every day I'm gaining followers every single day. But the only time I will lose followers in any given day is when I put out any sort of political stuff.
Yeah.
Now you're saying that has the highest interest level in terms of people out there that they're going to relate to politics. So what's your take on that? Because I noticed you put out some political stuff out there sometimes, and it always gets a lot of engagement, but you will lose followers. So what's your thoughts on that?
If it's important to you, talk about it, right? If it's not, then don't. So for Patrick, I mean, he's obviously passionate about it, and so he cares about it a lot. I honestly don't give a crap. So I post about it sporadically, as much as I see fit. I posted about Donald Trump when he got, the assassination attempt. It's like, all right, I hadn't talked about him for months before that. And it just is what it is. And so I think that all goes back down to vulnerability and transparency. Like, how much are you willing to share about your core beliefs? And that's okay to lose followers. At the end of the day, right? The goal isn't to have as many followers as possible. I mean, you got to actually define what your goal is. And so, like, if your goal is to make money, the people who don't like Trump are probably not even going to work with you anyway, like at the end of the day. And then the people who do like him, they're going to like you even more now, and they're probably going to give you more money. So it's going to always be a net positive, just being true to who you are, at least financially. And also, too, even not financially, but just like the people you attract into your life, right? Like the employees, everyone else. It's like, bro, nobody has to tiptoe around here talking about Jesus. Like, it is who we are. So, like, versus like, man, if I was never passionate about faith and I was just tiptoeing all the time, like, all of a sudden I'm just going to have a weird culture, and all these things. So yeah, I think it can only help personally.
Yeah, for sure. Anyways, we digress. I think you had a couple more on your list.
Yeah. A couple more are, number 7, I think, would be monetization. So you're going to grow based on how much you can monetize. Like, you don't have unlimited budget. So the reason Mr. Beast keeps growing is because he finds new ways to monetize and throw crazier and crazier videos. Joe Rogan keep growing because he gets paid $20 million a year by Spotify. PBD's the same way. You got to figure out a way to make money. It costs money to freaking grow. So that will always cap what you do. 8 would be your commitment level to it. There are people who like, dude, I want to grow, but they don't like doing it. And it's like, well, dude, you got to actually be committed to the craft if you want to be great. PBD's been doing it for 10 plus years. All these Joe Rogan's the same thing. They all been doing it a long time. So if you're just like trying to do it because it's like can make money, but you're not really passionate about it, then you'll fall off. The next one would be like current capital. So, you need money today. So what are you willing to invest today to get it done? Right? Like monetization vehicles later on down the road will help. But like today, how much capital do you have to invest in your brand? Because that will dictate how quickly you can grow. And then the last one is, and this is the one that can't really be defined, but everyone who's big usually has it. And that's some kind of X factor. So, what's your X factor? What makes you different than everyone else? There's a million real estate investors. There's a million fitness guys. There's something different about these guys that stands out. And an X factor can be a number of things. For some of the guys we've discussed, a guy like Hormozy walks around with his wife beater and super jacked.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't give a crap. That's an X factor.
And Crocs.
He don't care. That's his X factor. For me, people always talk about my hair. They talk about, X factor can also be about your story too. It's like, dude, I played pro sports. I did this. I've like done a lot of different things in my life. And that just kind of makes up my, aura, whatever you want to call it. All these guys have it. They all have some kind of unique thing that no one else really has. Like being generic does not stand out. You got to have something that is unique.
Yeah, I agree, man. Like when I first got into real estate investing, I thought I had to be collared shirt, button down, and be all like put together. But in all reality, like the real estate investing, like generic is like very like put together like that. And it's like, well, it's a crowded space on social media. And so what I realized is like the more I, have my tattoos showing, I wear a hat, like the more actually people trust me was what I found. And so I think ironically, I agree with you. I think you got to have that thing that's going to differentiate yourself. But last question for you, Ryan, man. What platform out of all the platforms out there, we got TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Threads, YouTube, and then you got the podcast, which is the long form, Apple Podcast, Spotify. Out of all these platforms, like which one do you think is the most undervalued moving forward, where people should be putting their attention most over the next 12 to 24 months?
Well, I'm a huge believer in long form. So I think that every big person has long form. And, it just makes sense, right? At the end of the day, the way you get somebody to do business with you is by building trust. The way you get trust is by spending time. And so how can people spend more time with you? It's not going to happen from just 30-second clips alone. So, at the end of the day, I'm more concerned about watch time than any other statistic. I'm not concerned about followers. I'm not concerned because honestly too, with by the way, followers, in my opinion, are not going to matter in the near future.
Why is that?
Because the algorithms show you who you want to see anyway. The algorithms don't care if you follow them or not.
Yeah, it's leveled the playing field, especially for someone brand new.
Yeah, like I don't know about you guys, but if you guys how often do you guys actually click follow for people, right? Like the algorithms are so good now, they're going to show you the people that you want to see. Like I'm sure there are people, some of you right here who have seen me, but you don't even follow me, right? Because the algorithm's just going to show you it anyways. So I kind of think followers is becoming more and more irrelevant. That's one. So two becomes, all right, well, watch time is all that really matters at the end of the day. How much time do they spend with you? Because I would rather get somebody who spent an hour with me and consumed a full podcast versus somebody who watched 10 of my 30-second reels. The amount of time spent together matters. And you can't do that with just reels alone. So I think long form has to happen. I think that podcast makes it the best of all worlds, where you can get the long form, you can chop it up, you can still get the short form. Another experiment that I did recently that, proved to work was I actually stopped posting, as much repurposed content on Instagram, because repurposed content doesn't get as many views.
When you say repurpose, what do you mean?
I mean, like just cutting up the podcast
Okay.
clips. So I stopped doing as many as I used to, and I stopped posting the trailer for a podcast on my Instagram and all that stuff, because they would get the least amount of views. And so I saw my views go up on I would just call it original short form content. But over the last 4 months of me testing it, I saw my worst results on the long form. So what that showed me was that those views matter on Instagram, even though they don't get us to money, because it makes people aware of the long form. And that was always my hypothesis, that those little clips are meant to just push people to the full episode. But now I have the data to prove it.
Dude, that's so good. I couldn't agree with you more, man, because I think the purpose of the short form is to get people to go over to listen to your podcasts. And if you're not pushing on the short form, people aren't going to go over there and listen. And that's where you ultimately you build the trust, man. Dude, I appreciate you coming on, man, and talking shop with the group, dude. Always a wealth of knowledge. I'm a big fan of everything you're doing, dude. Let's do this, man. I appreciate you, Ryan. Thank you so much, dude. See ya.